Hello, and thank you for joining us for another segment of Supreme Feminine Essence, the gifts you were born with. I'm your host, Mia Saenz, and with me this segment is Laura Eisenhower. Laura is a global activist, and she also writes about the divine feminine, which is really very important in today's awakening within the woman's feminine essence. So welcome, Laura. It's wonderful to have you.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So we always start out with these wonderful stories so people can relate to us and understand where we're coming from. Would you share with us your path of finding this beautiful divine feminine that you share with the world?
I think it's just really started when I was young. I just could really feel the imbalance on the planet and was just very sensitive to a lot of the programmings and a lot of the things that I was seeing. Basically the divorce between humanity and nature. There just seemed to be a lot of disconnect, except for like when you're playing with kids outside. The young ones, seem to have it down, but this whole growing up into adulthood and just sort of seeing the expectations and the overlays upon us seemed to take us further and further away from ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so I launched on a very interesting journey into what I consider to be like the underworld, I guess you could say, and discovered that it's really like the mother womb. It's really the creative essence of the planet, and we're all deeply connected to this, but it requires us to go deep inside to clear all the different things that are trying to get in the way of us relating to this on an organic level, that being a lot of programmings attached to the feminine and a lot of the gender stereotypes that, still play out, a lot of the patriarchal controls that, pretty much block the wisdom body of the goddess from fully expressing herself. And so I just went on this crazy journey, and along the way at times I couldn't make sense out of it, but there was a lot of times also I had epiphanies about what it was all about. And it really had to do with, becoming empowered and reclaiming this energy in a more embodied way, and sharing it with people because it exists within all of us, so that we can start to drop all the stuff that's getting in the way of our ability to transform as a planet, because this is a crucial energy to set free to make the world a better place and to really heal a lot of the afflictions that have taken place in nature and, our soul essence and how we relate to one another.
I love that, and I'm so glad that you did take that journey. It's a beautiful journey for each woman and each man, because there's that balance of the masculine and the feminine. How would you explain in more layman's terms the depth that it's not an overnight transformation? That's what some people think. Oh, I can do this course and I'm okay, I'm fine. But it's not. It's years of study, ourself within, to understand where they all lie together.
Right. Yeah, and we're all made of the divine blueprint of the masculine and feminine in unity together, and when we on an ego level can embrace this and align our ego identity nature with this, we're really bringing in a lot of higher dimensional energy, and it's like one could call it the Christ consciousness, because that's the magical child born of unity. Yes. One could call it just their higher self, coming in and integrating with the physical, and it just kind of takes care of that separation, the illusion of separation we've been under. And it's very deep because we've lived many lifetimes, dealing with a lot of the externals, war and, all different types of things in our history that have sort of controlled the way we go about our lives. Men go off and fight war and the women are at home, and yes. And so the masculine really needs to connect with this energy as well, and start to look at what has been going on in the outer world and how that has crippled our ability to, really embody this blueprint. And the reason it takes so long is because there's many, many layers. People always say with the spiritual path is layers of the onion. Well, when we look at the programmings, those are also layers that we're, moving past. And then we get to the core, and once we get to the core, we start to recognize that it has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with frequency. It has to do with the law of balance. And, finding our way based on what life gives us, and trusting the process of both the positive and negatives that are out there, so that we can really begin to dig into where we're, unified and able to assimilate these experiences in a way that serves us, right, and serves our wisdom instead of crushes us and makes us feel like victims. So we can use life for all the challenges that it throws us in a way that helps us to awaken, versus the programming which, tends to put us in duality and judgment. And sort of a lack of self-worth if it's not going our way or according to the plan or the expectation that we're brought up, thinking we need to achieve.
Right. And everybody who thinks that they can have a smooth path at growing in their awakening consciousness, think again.
Yeah.
You need those negatives to bring out the positive.
Yeah, I mean, because, our DNA has been, people have talked a lot about this, so I'm not going to repeat too much. But, obviously our DNA has been compromised, and frequency fences have been put in place that make it very difficult to expand into our highest DNA potential. Mm-hmm. So when one's on a spiritual path and they start to hit those walls, it's very easy to want to give your power away and start to freak out and not really know how to handle it. But that's the journey, is to go into those barriers and to, move past them. And
yeah.
You call them gatekeepers, frequency fences, or whatever, but it's part of our expansion, and it's not all the bliss and meditation and just ease that I think people expect, but it's certainly well worth it. All the discomfort is like, muscles being stretched on your way up Everest. You just have to consider the pain a part of the process.
And when you realize that those caverns that we're climbing are at the top is so much beauty, and you've already experienced, just hold on to that thought, that knowledge that there is beauty on the other side. So I think that people fall back into the unconscious level when they just have said, I've had enough. But really when we keep climbing, it's really beautiful.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of traps out there for those moments we say we've had enough. Mm-hmm. And that's where addiction comes in. That's where, pharmaceutical drugs and doctors and everything that's out there saying, oh, okay, you're feeling weak? Hey, I'll help you. And then we give our power away, and we're really not progressing at all. But, of course, it's not a terrible thing to go through it, but as long as you can kind of wake up along the way, it'll be fine.
Right. It's awesome. Okay, share with us, please, about the divine feminine emerging in the patriarchal world where programming and conditioning exist.
It just, it's about empowerment, having a voice. The feminist movement tends to drag people away from connecting with their true essence because it's about trying to shape a woman to be more like a man, and then that's about liberation. Mm-hmm. And I think it misses the mark a little bit, quite a lot, actually, because women going to war just doesn't seem to solve the problem. So in a patriarchal world, what does it mean to be embracing the divine feminine? It's understanding how connected we are with nature, and this is for men too. Nature is regenerative, and there's 4 elements: earth, air, fire, water. If we deny any part of ourselves and expect to just be enlightened and in a state of bliss, then we force ourselves and we pressure ourselves to fit an image that to me is not the divine feminine. Anything that's genuine and authentic to me is divine. Anything that is in its natural state is divine. So whether that means that some fire comes out, some water comes out, some a mixed bag of energies comes out, as long as it's true to you, you're going to clear all sorts of things and become more grounded. And the voice is a very powerful tool for that. And that's why in our history we see how suppressed the feminine voice has been. Mm-hmm. So I think, just being empowered to be true to yourself and not worrying, about fitting some image or worrying about fitting some, societal standard, and just, embracing and loving the self. And whatever erupts from that place, to me, is divine. Even if it doesn't come out okay, it's a part of the process of really healing and becoming a part of this experience in a co-creative way, instead of, hiding in the corner and hiding one's light or trying to fit with the program in order to fit in. And, it takes just a lot of guts, but it's the most liberating thing ever. And, patriarchy doesn't know what to do with that because it's trying to trap us in the feminist movement or trying to keep us quiet. And when one just gets in touch with the truth of who they are, the most natural state of what feels right, all that stuff, falls away because it can't feed on anything. When we're true to ourselves, there's nothing that can grab onto it. It's when we feel the insecurity or feel the fear and anxiety or are afraid of speaking out, we tend to attract a lot of different things that prey upon it and make it harder. So you just got to stop playing the game and just set yourself free for the sake of doing it, and watch how much your life transforms, on top of the fact that it sends out a frequency to the collective and assists in our global transformation.
That's beautiful. Will you share with us how the divine feminine connects with Gaia?
Well, Gaia, this is really a part of our ancient history, and it's kind of lengthy to get into, but the planetary body is unlike any other planet. It's seeded with a Merkaba star, which is capable of reaching a 13-dimensional capacity. And so the number 13 is very significant in a sense. If we think about the zodiac with 12 signs, there's actually 13 signs. And the mother arc energy is actually the number 13. And basically right now we're in alignment with the galactic plane, and so it gives us much more ability to connect with this energy, because when there are a lot of cataclysms that threw the Earth off its axis, and sort of like going through rehabilitation after a big accident, which we've all been a part of, we've been slowly getting ourselves back and back in alignment. But of course there's all sorts of agendas that want to distract us away from this. And so the planetary body in nature is our greatest ally and guide, and our soul deeply connects with it, because our soul is made of the 4 elements. That's why in astrology, you know, there's earth, air, fire, and water signs. So if you really break it down, it's like, wait a second, there is really no differentiation. And that's why the Native Americans understood the importance of animal medicine and how we're connected to, you know, all the creatures and animals. And that's why herbs and plants and, you know, good nutrition, you know, the body really responds to more than anything else, because we're connected to this. And so our thoughts, our behaviors, our actions have a direct impact on the Earth, because the Earth responds to us. And in this holding tank of this lower density, we're given the opportunity to change ourselves to then see the world respond. But we're also going through a lot of lessons about how to do this, and that's what reincarnation and the wheel of the zodiac and the lessons of duality and the tree of knowledge has helped to teach us. But it's the Kundalini activation, reaching all the way up into our highest self, that brings about this balance. And until we figure it out, we're going to be spinning in this time loop. But once we do figure it out, we actually restore the tree of life, and we restore our DNA, because the tree of life is actually 12-strand DNA and beyond, and the essence of sacred union, which connects us with our immortality. Because before all these cataclysms, we were able to come and go from the physical as we pleased. But when the energy stepped down because of free will and the negative ego, the earth ended up sinking into a lower density, and the goddess energy ended up morphing into the physical planet to assist us in returning home. But we're given the free will choice about how we're going to do it. So it's really up to us during this time to align ourselves with what's really going to assist us, and to watch out for all the things that distract us. And our physical bodies are the best tool and teacher, because pain and any kind of symptom gives us a direct message about what we need to do to change. And if we listen to our bodies, we can do the work. But if we listen too much to the externals, our physical body might suffer, but we might not put the 2 dots together and understand that it's our physical body that's going to help us stay strong and in alignment. And we have to allow unwellness and symptoms to serve us as a messenger, rather than make us feel like, oh, we're sick and we need medication and we need to go to the doctor, and everything they say is stronger than what my own inner voice is telling me. And it's like, enough with that. We have what we need inside of us, and in order to awaken it and upgrade it, we got to trust ourselves a little bit more and embrace everything that's coming up in our lives and in our physical selves. And then we'll find that we're adjusting, and the direct reflection that we get is that the planet is shifting with us, and we reach our multidimensional nature, which we already are. It's just dormant because we're looking down or we're looking outside.
There were a couple things that popped up that almost seemed too simplistic, because you're like a professor at this, and you so beautifully and eloquently speak it, and it's lovely, and it just flows from your essence like honey, you know, from a beehive. It's lovely. I wanted to just bring up briefly, in case people need to understand about the temple and how if we care for it, it's really simplistic that, and this is on a simple level, but it houses our soul. And when we are I don't want to say in love, when we are loving and understand, and as you said, get rid of the fears, this is just the basic steps are what begins to rise us up. For those who are beginning it at the base level, getting in touch with even the simplicity of our body and loving it is what nurtures us into lifting us upward towards the grander scale of the divine feminine. And I know that that's very, very simplistic compared to what you said, but I want people to understand that, you know, you can't just always jump right in mentally. You also have to take care of, like you were saying, the temple, the physical aspects. It's all a well balance. And also, this is very silly, after all, this amazing stuff you've been talking about, but I wanted to briefly talk about you said 13, and it just started clicking off. I started seeing all the 13 goddesses, the 13, everything 13, and that people are so superstitiously afraid of. Can we talk just briefly about getting rid of superstition? Because truly, what I got as I was listening is, if we can get rid of that fear, it's all fear-based. So if we can get rid of the fear, we can really claim who we truly are.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's no 13th elevator. I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And, I mean, that's how much there's an exile of the divine feminine energies. And our calendars have been shifted. When we think about the 13 moon calendar and just the women's cycles, they're completely in touch with the true calendar, but we're dealing with a whole nother time system that, keeps us kind of out of alignment and out of balance. And so we're kind of born into it right away. We have to really work hard at bringing ourselves into alignment with ourselves. And it's really not externalizing the ego. I mean, as long as we don't pay too much attention to what other people think, and we, rely on ourselves for that validation, that's a huge step for people. Most things that people are controlled by have to do with how they appear in the outer world. That's why status and appearance is so, put on the list of like one of the highest priorities, but when you love yourself, the beauty radiates from within to the outer world, and it's much more infectious and genuine than anything else. And so the patriarchal programming's on top of the calendars, throwing us a little bit out of whack, and all the superstition connected to these numbers is what keeps us in this lower density. And it's Chiron, the wounded healer, which is a part of the asteroid belt, which represents the pain and afflictions that we experience in this human density, that helps us to break into our galactic consciousness, because it's through feeling the afflictions and the pain and reacting to it and being sensitive to it that helps us dig into our ancient memories of what we're really made of. And we wouldn't be able to get there if we didn't have some sort of trigger. And so a lot of people working with the Chiron energy can either sink below it and become kind of a victim, or they can use it as a tool to open up the portals into their galactic consciousness, which then helps us to be functioning in nature with all aspects included. The reason 13 is taken away is because it keeps our DNA from being able to go through the gates into our galactic chakras and what is beyond this realm. And as long as we are dealing with that programming, we're stunted. And it has to do with the stargates on the planet, it has to do with our DNA, and it has to do with, our life experience and how so much of this is overlaid on us. And so, embrace that number, and it's beyond numbers. It also connects us to the 0 point energy and helps us to get to the center of the wheel, which means that we're in our wholeness and we've integrated all aspects, and we're not just running around bumping into all sorts of challenges constantly in the work of restoring our wholeness. And wholeness and balance is everything. Once we do that, we don't really need the astrological wheel, but it's a tool and it can assist us. But when the patriarchy got their hands on it, they distorted it just enough to keep us, ruled by these lower forces. And so, it's all chakras included, but without having the ability to bring in the higher consciousness, our lower chakras stay stuck and plugged into the matrix, which always triggers fear and anxieties. So fear and anxiety is really aspects of ourselves we haven't fully gotten to know. So we're a little bit nervous about it. But when we can say, oh my God, this is just me I'm getting to know, there's no real fear beyond just getting to know the self, then it's not so fearful anymore. But when we look outside of ourselves and we don't feel empowered, it can crush us. And let it be a doorway within, and realize that all the manipulations are just to keep us from standing in our power. Because our darkness is the fertile soil. It receives the seeds of our higher consciousness. And as long as we're not standing in our power, something else is trying to run the show. So we have to be comfortable with our darkness and the depth of who we are. And that's maybe a little bit daunting at first, but once that place is entered, as long as it takes, doesn't matter, nothing can get in there and nothing can touch you.
That's beautiful. Thank you. We've spoken about somewhat how to empower, but let's talk a little bit more about empowering this within us and to transform our relationships so that it becomes a sacred union.
Yeah, well, relationships are where a lot of the difficult work takes place. I mean, it's enough to do the inner work just by oneself, but when you're in a partnership, you have that direct contact with, what might be, one could say, is a mirror. But sometimes the mirror isn't quite the genuine reflection you'd like to see, and that's where the programmings come in and the different ancestral patternings that got passed down generation to generation. So the deeper we understand ourselves, the more we're in touch with our intuition, the more we can tell, what's a programming, what's sort of a patriarchal energy, and where we have either bought into that patriarchal energy ourselves, or we have slipped into feeling like a victim to it or feeling beneath it. And so relationships are a great way to sort of see how these energies run in our lives. And it doesn't matter if you're masculine or feminine. There's all sorts of patriarchal women. There's all sorts of women carrying victim consciousness. There's patriarchal men, and there's men carrying victim consciousness. So it's finding that middle ground and seeing that, kind of like, wow, let's not use our parents as a model. Let's not look at society as a model. Let's not count on the television or anything else. Like, shut it all down and just look at, the two individuals for who they are, and make a commitment to connect to that deepest part of who the other is. And then the rest just gets purged, and you just keep flushing it, and it's just the process of purification. And we have to do that balancing our own masculine and feminine energies, and it's ideal to do that inner work first so that you can attract somebody that resonates with it, versus being buried in all sorts of stuff and being in a partnership while you're kind of digging your way out together, which can work in some cases, but sometimes, it just creates a lot of entanglements if a person's not willing to do, that work. So I think when people come into a relationship and they really want to embody sacred union, you have to kind of commit to the process of unearthing the deeper treasures of that blueprint. And it's a dance, it's a harmony, it's not a power struggle. It's the Shiva and Shakti energy, it's the Christ Sophia energy, and it's in harmony together, and it keeps birthing beautiful energies and miracle vibrations that make a person realize, like, yeah, we have a beautiful flow together. But if there's power struggles and disharmony, it just keeps enabling the negative ego to run amok, and that leads to arguments and fights, and blaming and judgments and criticisms and all sorts of things that cripple, this beautiful energy flow, which is why the planet looks the way it does, because there isn't that true union, and it has to start within. And when you can create it with somebody else, it's called alchemical marriage, and the ancients and mystics understood this. They called it the hieros gamos, and it was, very well known back then that it helped restore the land and regenerate the land, because we're conduits of spirit and we're connected to the earth, and that energy flow has to be circulating without any blockages for it to really transform things. And partnership is a great way to do it, and it doesn't matter if it's the same sex or it's opposite sex. It's love, and it's the love for the self and mirroring that divine reflection in the other, and being willing to move away all the stuff that disrupts that true connection and the true nature of each individual.
I love that. If anyone has actually experienced that balance in a relationship, they know how beautiful it is, and they don't want anything else. But it's finding it within themselves first before.
Yeah, or else you don't have any kind of grounding.
Yeah.
You're just constantly responding and reacting, and it can be challenging, but those glimpses of when it really does work, the bliss that the body feels and how healing and regenerative it is to the physical self is like so obvious compared to how painful it can be to have disharmony. I mean, it affects the physical body immediately. It's just like, it's so obvious that the physical body responds to disharmony in a way that says, excuse me, this isn't working. All sorts of physical symptoms come up, but when the bliss flows, it's a beautiful thing, and it heals everything. And that's why babies need love to grow, and thrive. That's the energy behind form is everything. If the energy is disrupted, the form and the physical is going to get disrupted. So it's just that commitment to taking the higher road, and of course communication is the biggest tool, because communication is the magician. It's the Hermes energy, and we're sound healers. Just our words and our tone make our reality. So it's just very important to be careful, and to be self-reflective and be willing to be humble when in partnership to get all the necessary growths that it offers.
That's awesome. Thank you. Let's also talk about how this is directly linked to our ancient history, timelines, hidden agendas, and the time we are in. Laura, would you please share with us how this is directly related to our ancient history, timelines, hidden agendas, and the time that we're in currently?
Yeah, about 26,000 years ago, after the final sinking of Atlantis, I guess you could say, technologies were put in place to affect the ley lines and affect our ability to be in unity. So this isn't just us bumbling around trying to figure it out. We have a lot of things that are trying to make this very, very difficult. If we look at the world today, we have geoengineering, we have weather modification, chemtrails, as many call them. and all sorts of things to control nature and to control humans, mind control. And media and news and religion and governments are the prime source where this all kind of comes out of. So this is not new. I mean, this has been in the works for a really long time, and what this agenda represents is a very patriarchal agenda. I mean, all we need to do is look at what they're trying to do to nature to understand what they're trying to do to the feminine within both the man and woman, because of course we carry both energies. And it's to cripple us so that we can't advance into our multidimensional nature, because if we do that, these parasitic forces have nothing to feed on, which is very threatening to them. So there's more than one controller group, and I don't want to mention, all the workings of it all, but the whole point is the organic ascension timeline is connected to committing to the divinity path, and committing to a divinity path has a lot to do with sacred union and everything we're talking about. It's not a path of perfection, it's a path of devotion and commitment, because obviously, trying to reach perfection is, not something that we're going to skate through very easily without getting really down on ourselves. But it's really about the commitment and devotion, because, the Fool card in the Tarot deck is the number 0. And the reason it's called the Fool, and it's the closest to God's source, is because the Fool doesn't mind falling down and getting back up again. That's why it's called the Fool. So everybody, or some people say to me, why would the Fool card be the closest to God's source? Why is it the 0 card and it's called the Fool? Because it's happy-go-lucky, it's in its divine innocence, and it's okay making a mistake because it corrects itself and it self-corrects. And that's what we're here to do, is to live our lives, but humbly, self-correct when it's necessary. And that, to me, is more of a divinity path than a path of perfection and enlightenment, because we already are enlightened. We just have to maintain our connection to that by pulling the weeds and, discarding the things that no longer serve us, and making sure that we're keeping the temple intact. And the same laws apply to just our physical lives. Every time we create something, there's a byproduct. Something needs to be thrown out. Something needs to be composted. And it makes the soil stronger every time something dies. And then the new growth happens. So when we negate the energetic work, we tend to overwhelm ourselves, and we tend to feel stress and like we're carrying too much weight and baggage. And it's very difficult to feel enlightened in those states. And then sometimes, we sort of are ungrounded in our heads in the skies, and we're bumping into walls because we can't really keep our feet on the ground. And so, it's just a process of integration and grounding and expansion, and it's very much the tree of life. Roots, open branches. And that's really the path. And so we experience enough different, incarnations, and we wear enough different hats to have the cellular memory to kind of know how to self-correct in the larger scheme of things. And that's what the nodes in astrology connect to. It's the Ouroboros, the serpent biting its tail. And there's certain things that survive death that come with us in the next lifetime. So death, people got to drop their fear of it. It's cyclical. It's not linear. And it constantly, moves us into new experiences until the necessity of death ceases, and we can come and go from the physical as we please, and the veil of life and death is lifted. But until it's happening, it gives us the opportunity to learn how to, be on a divinity path. And it's everything about the ego. Is the ego, self-serving? Is it in a negative consciousness, or is it in alignment with the higher self, willing to do this work? And it's devotion, because we know when we devote to something, it's okay to make a mistake. And that's the same thing with sacred union partnerships. As long as certain things are kept intact and there's a certain level of integrity, everything should be fine. And even if not, and something has to end, you pick up, you learn the lesson, and that pain and that loss, is the great teacher. And it's all pretty organic. And the thing is, with all the dogma out there, with all the New Age deceptions, with all the books and all the masters and all the teachers, or the so-called masters and teachers, we don't allow life to give us the teaching, which it does. And we're all spiritual beings. We don't need the lingo or the clothing or the guru or the books read to prove that. It's natural. It's who we are. We're multidimensional beings. And our unconscious energy is actually spiritual energy that we haven't woken up to yet. But because all these overlays are there, people tend to reject it if they think it's all hogwash, or they tend to embrace it and get lost in it. But we got to find that middle ground where we just recognize this is who we are. We don't need anybody to tell us. We don't need anything to prove it. We just need to live our lives and, have a strong enough connection to what matters most for our well-being and our health and our ability to expand beyond this lower density to make it. And that's simply all we need to do is to create that awareness and create that commitment. The rest is absolutely natural, and there's not one who has more than the other. They just might have gone down the path and located it or awakened it sooner, but that hierarchy stuff is, to me, a bunch of BS. So
I totally agree. I always have about that. Thank you. That's why I said amen, because I really, really believe that it's within us already. And for those who just read and don't actually imbibe it in their body, in their being, or not in their body, but in their soulful being, it's ridiculous.
It's an every moment thing. I mean, it's like, and it's obvious with religion where people just go once a week and you just apologize for all the terrible things you did during the week. It's like, it's an every moment thing. Love is sacred, sex is sacred,
Right.
We're sacred, and we have to honor these things. We have to protect these things. We have to honor ourselves and our relationships and our families, and we have to walk the talk. And if we do that, we're going to find that we're very expanded and very profound, individuals with incredible spiritual abilities. But it's not because we got it from a book. It's because we live that truth, and we honor ourselves enough to embody it and to have it be reflected in our words and our actions and our choices. And it's not far from us to be able to do this. It's a choice, compared to, reading a book and then being wrapped up in addiction and lower forms of relationships and then thinking, because you have the clothing and the lingo that you're fine. But it's a full-on experience, and we're multidimensional, and that's our spiritual energy. When it's grounded, it shifts the physical, and that's what transmutation and alchemy is all about, turning the lead of this human experience into gold based on what we're open to and how it can be embodied in the human vessel and grounded into the physical matter. Without that, it's just a great philosophy and a great concept, but it doesn't do anything in the practical world. And that cutoff and that division has to go, and we can lift the veil at any moment.
Thank you.
We don't have to wait for the rest of the world to figure it out either.
That's right. That's right. And it is our birthright to. It's already here. We just need to see it. Thank you, Laura, very much. Can you share with us your free gift?
Yeah, my free gift is doing a 15-minute tarot consultation just to sort of do an energy check and just see where you are on this path and what I might be able to assist with to help to clear foreign energy and awaken the goodies that are within.
That's totally awesome. Thank you. That's very, very cool. We're out of time, and we've run over, and it's okay because it's all beautiful. But what last message from your heart would you like to leave us with today?
I just think, we're in a profound time right now. I know a lot feels like it's breathing down our neck, and there's a lot of threatening things, around us. But, it is pushing us to the edge, and it's helping us to really, decide what the most important thing we could, be in alignment to. And so if you feel fear, if you feel concerned about what you see around you, allow the treasures within to come out, because that's the antidote. We are made of the antidote. We are the medicine. We can be the immune system of this planet, and this is where unification counts. And we have what it takes, because the spirit energy is more powerful than matter, and it's time to let that run the show rather than suppress that part of who we are in exchange for getting caught up in the propaganda and all the games that are taking our power. So just be empowered, and anything it takes to get there. I do readings. Check out my website, cosmicgaiasophia.com. My intention is to empower you and to help you to be the person you came here to be.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Laura, for joining us. It was
Thank you for
lovely to have
having
you. It was wonderful. Thank you all. We'll see you in the next segment. Bye.